Thanks, Tsepo. I thought before Tsepo thanks all of us, I should tell you a story.
Before we listen to the story, actually, Africans have been conditioned based on the information that they have received over the years to feel and think that their own society cannot offer anything. However, that is beginning to change because several Africans have woken up and they are beginning to ask questions. This is fundamental shift in terms of the way Africans approach things. By them asking this question, a number of countries in the continent are beginning to realize that there are lots of other benefits in terms of infrastructure development and a whole lot of other very positive things that's happening in their own community as compared to what they believe or may see in the Western media. I think Thabo Mbeki has a very important message here.
There's a very good South African. Let me call him Tom Jones. He owns these very posh lodges along the Kruger Park. Very nice, beautiful, six-star places. So one of those lodges is built in the bush, and it's glass all around, so that when you sit inside, you feel like you are in the bush. It's very, very good, very well designed for those purposes. If you are a tourist, you really live among the wild animals. They are walking around and you can see them. And it's built on stilts. The reason for that is because the Kruger National Park at some point decided to give concessions within the park for lodges, within the park but on the edges. And they issue leases for 25, 30 years. And one of the conditions is that at the end of your lease, you must remove your lodge and leave the bush as it was. So that's why they built on stilts. So, and really this particular lodge, as I say, where they have all of these chalets, just glass, and you really feel like you are in the bush. You live with the animals, next to the animals. So he decides to invite an American woman who is very senior in terms of fashion, but who also owns an architecture magazine which sells in the States 3 million copies a month. It's not for architects, but it's an architecture magazine for the casual, people casually interested in architecture. So it's very popular. So he decides, as part of his marketing, that he's going to invite this lady to come to this particular lodge. And he'll pay for everything. So she came, and they pick her up here in Johannesburg, take her out to the lodge. And so he says, Tom Jones, to me, that the first night they have dinner together with this lady. And at some point in the course of the dinner, he asks her, what do you think about the lodge? And she diverts discussion. She doesn't answer the question. She diverts to some other issue until the end of the dinner. Following evening, same thing. What do you think about our lodge? And the lady says, the weather was so lovely today. So it doesn't answer. Third day, same thing. Then on the fourth day of the dinner, she says, she apologizes to him. She says, you know, you've been asking me what I think about this, and I've been avoiding answering this question. And the reason for that is because I've been very angry with myself. So I had to overcome this anger, she says. Because the last time I was on the African continent was 20 years ago. And I came on holiday to Kenya, see the wild animals and so on. And this is the first time in 20 years that I come back to Africa. So we come, fly from the US, landing here at Johannesburg International. It was still Jan Smuts those days. So she says, I look through the window of the plane as they are coming to land, and I see a very modern city as we're coming to land. So I'm puzzled. So they land. And then she says, we come out of the airport, we drive into Johannesburg town, and the roads are excellent. Not like New York where she comes from. New York has got potholes, but Johannesburg streets, absolutely extraordinary. So I'm again very puzzled. And then in the end, you people fetch me from Johannesburg, you bring me here. What extraordinary architecture in the middle of the African bush. This is stunning. And then she says, you see, the reason I was angry with myself is because during these 20 years that I've not been on the continent, I have believed the stories told to me by the US press about Africa. So when I see Johannesburg from the air, this can't be Africa. Because what the press tell me is that this is jungle. Africa is just jungle. I come off, I get into these roads, better than New York roads, and then into the bush to see this extraordinary architecture. I'm angry with myself because I believed what the US press told me about Africa. It's primitive, it's backward. Those people don't even know how to wear a pair of trousers. It's wild. And then I come and I see all of this. So she, in the end, she went back and wrote an extraordinary piece, 3/4 of which was about South Africa, not this launch. 1/4 was about the launch. Very good about the launch. The reason I'm telling this story is because of what Malaika and Simuzondi Ezulu said. Because what Malaika was saying, why is it that our people allow themselves to be misled? Like this lady allowed herself to be misled by the US press. The CEO here of the foundation was telling me as we were coming that yesterday he had some interaction with some young intellectuals, South African, speaking various languages, Setswana, Zulu, Xhosa, Venda, this and that and the other. And they were discussing what is the word in Setswana for xenophobia. You know, it doesn't exist. In Zulu, So in all the African languages that were spoken by this group, they all say, no, we don't know what the word is in our African languages for xenophobia. Why? It's because it's not in the culture, it's not in the history, it's not in the whatever among Africans. And yet I'm saying, like the American lady, we've allowed somebody else to tell us that was xenophobic. And we believe it. Like if you take this most recent attacks here in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, it's clear these are organized by somebody. And the looters are brought to loot by bus and are taken away by bus. And of course, once they start looting and so on, and me, I'm in the street, I also join the looting. But it's organized, it's obvious. And yet the narrative we're communicating is this narrative which, as Malaika was saying, will frighten Zimbabweans. We will then believe that they'll get here and then get attacked and go there. I don't know how many Zimbabweans live in South Africa. 3 million? How many of them get attacked? None. And yet I'm saying, we allow ourselves to be influenced by some other people who will define us, which is what Simo was raising. Why do we allow ourselves to be defined by somebody else, such that we lose the capacity to be the kind of change agent we want to be? Because we allow that somebody else tells us who we are, tells us what our problems are, and tells us what we need to do. And hopefully what, as both him and Malaika were saying today, our exposure to this learning here empowers us to say, we really need to take care of our own destiny. And to do that means to decide who we are, not to be told by somebody else who we are. And therefore act in the correct way to be the sort of change agents, the change agents that this institute is trying to make all of us to be. I think it was Dr. Paswan who said, Max, that she's inviting more people to join as students. Dr. Paswana, I think the CEO of the foundation and myself are likely to join the next team of students. But thank you very much.